Hello friends, it's Shari. Today I have a fun Valentine treat bag to share with you. I thought it would be fun to use the Build a Gumball machine and the treat tote bag to create some fun Valentines with a candy theme because I discovered we can take some of the How You Bean add-ons like the little conversation hearts here, the peppermints, the jelly beans from the original set, and even, yes, candy corn, and make some really fun candy gumball machines. So I've started by cutting that solid piece of the Build a Gumball machine from some white cardstock. This is the Nina Solar White cardstock because we will do our stamping and our coloring. But I've already cut out all the other pieces to build our gumball machines. And you can see here I have 4 different color schemes I'm going to do. I am doing these as sort of Valentine candies, but these would be a great idea for any party or treat that you want to give. So for each of these, I'm going to stamp a different How You Bean add-on in there. And I'm just using the frame of the gumball machine that's cut from fog cardstock as a guide to kind of see where to line up my stamp. For these little hearts, and for all of them, you're going to want to place them towards the bottom of the gumball machine rather than the center so that they look like they're resting in the bottom of the globe. And for these, I'm actually stamping them in River Rock ink, so it's not quite as stark as the jet black ink. We're going to have a softer tone to these. And this is a Copic friendly ink, but it is that gray color, so you get a bit of a lighter effect. I am stamping them twice so that I have a really nice impression and a slightly darker outline. So I'll do the same for my other candies here. I have my candy corn. Yes, we're going to make some Valentine candy corn. I don't know if you've seen that before, but I have. We're also going to make a Valentine mix of jelly beans. And then for the peppermints, I'm actually stamping them in Wild Rose. Now this was the first color I used, and once that absorbed into the paper and dried, I wasn't really happy with the color. So I actually stamped it 2 more times. I stamped it again in guava and I stamped it again in bubblegum, and I picked the one that I like best. Spoiler alert, the winner was bubblegum. So you can see I have all of my candies here stamped out and ready to color. Now we're not going to be coloring the peppermints really. I am going to show you a way that I kind of added a little bit to them to make them a little more dimensional here once I get all my other ones colored. So I'm going to start with the Valentine candy corn. If you've ever seen Valentine candy corn in the store, it is basically shades of pink and red and white. And the dark red goes on the bottom of the candy corn. So I'm just going to go through and add that to the bottom of all of these all at once. And I'm just doing 1 layer of color. I'm not worrying about any shading right now, and I'm going to show you what I do for shading here in just a little bit. So I'm going through all of these with the 1 color so that I don't have to keep going back and forth between my markers. Once I have all of the bottoms colored in, I can move on to that next color, which is a pink color, and that is the middle area of our candy corns. And just as before, I'm doing 1 layer of color, and then I will come back and show you how to add a little bit of shading. Now for the white, I don't like it stark white like that, so I have my E000, which is a kind of brownish, tannish color that I like to use when I have a white area that I don't want white. Now I'm going back with the same markers you saw I went in with E000, just added a bit more ink to add the darker area. I'm doing the same with the pink and now with that dark pinkish red. So just a little extra ink on the side there gives it a little more dimension and shading. Now here is where I noticed I wasn't really thrilled with that wild rose color. Not that I don't like the color, it just didn't go with my papers I had cut for my gumball machines. So I wanted to see which I like better. So I'm stamping out guava, which was quite a contender. I almost picked that one. But I also thought, let me stamp out bubblegum too, and we'll just see once they dry which one I like best. And as I said before, bubblegum was the winner. Now back to my coloring, I'm moving on to those conversation hearts. And I pulled out 6 different colors. And for this, to make sure that I vary the colors and I don't accidentally end up with 2 pinks right beside each other, I'm going to go through my colors. So you can see I started with pink, then orange, then yellow. Now I'm on to the green, then a blue, and a purple. And conversation hearts also have white. You could also leave some white ones if you wanted, but I thought it would be great for these to be all rainbow. Now, these are my only candies that are all these pretty colors. Everything else is more of a Valentine kind of color scheme, which is why I think you could change this to any kind of candy for any kind of celebration. Once I have all my colors in there, I went back to the pink and some other colors and added some second hearts in those same colors. Now for my jelly beans, I'm using the same colors I used on the candy corn with the addition of that light purple that I used on the conversation hearts. So I will have 4 colors of jelly beans. I have that red, then the pink. I went back to that red just to add a little more of that darkness in there. Now I'm pulling out that purple. And then what I did in color purple, I'm adding that E000 again in for kind of a vanilla jelly bean, if you will. Then I'm doing just like the candy corn and I'm going back and adding some shading using the exact same marker. I did this with the hearts as well. If you notice, I did it while I was coloring instead of going back. I just added a second layer for just a little bit of shading. All right, now that everything is stamped and colored, I do need to go back to my conversation hearts and make sure I add the conversation part of the conversation hearts. So we have all these choices in this stamp set, and of course these are always stamped in a red on the candy for whatever reason. And I'm going to go through and stamp these, making sure I turn it so they're nice and lined up straight. Unlike the real candies that we get that are always kind of wonky or going off the side. And I'm just varying the sentiments that I put on here. Now, I did get to some of these in the back, and I knew I couldn't really stamp the sentiment unless I did some masking. So I pulled out the original How You Bean set that has some little smiley faces and added those to those few in the background. So here's all my candies ready to go, and now I need to fill my machines. But it was a little stark white, and I thought it needed a little bit of shading to make it look a little more realistic. So I have some kiddie pool ink and a small blending brush, and I'm just dusting the edges of all these pieces with that light blue ink. And it's okay if it goes onto those colored images. You don't really see that color very much, but it gives it the look of kind of the glass globe of the gumball machine. So I went and did this to all 4 of these pieces. I'm actually going to switch to a different brush here in a minute just because it was a little bit bigger. I didn't want my huge brushes, but a little bit bigger than the one I was using worked a little bit better. So again, just dusting all the edges, and you can see as it hits those candies, it doesn't really affect the color too much. Now this one I did try to make sure I didn't go into my peppermints too much because they don't have any coloring. For the jelly beans, I did pull out my white gel pen and add some little shine marks so that they looked nice and shiny. And now I'm ready to assemble all of my gumball machines. Now I kept them kind of in a monochromatic color scheme. You could make these all the colors that you wanted. So for each of these, I picked a light shade of cardstock, a medium shade, and a dark shade. And then for all of the little areas here, that narwhal piece, they're all cut the same. And so are the silver pieces you're going to see me pull in. So I have some silver sparkle cardstock for some of the details, the narwhal for that opening where the candy comes out. For this one, I use lilac, sugar plum, and then one of the shades from the purple textured canvas cardstock pack. And this die creates little score lines so you can see exactly where to line up all of these detail pieces as you build your gumball machine. You can see here all those little silver pieces that I cut earlier. So we have that top. I just think these little pops of glitter really make those areas stand out. So we have the top, the frame around the opening, and then of course our little thing that we turn to get our candy to come out. And then I can glue this whole piece to the overall frame. Now you'll see towards the end I did kind of change the order in which I glued these pieces together. By the end, I glued that big piece onto the frame first and then glued all the little pieces on. I think you just have to find whichever method works for you best to assemble your gumball machine. There's no right or wrong answer. just whatever works best. I did find that when I put those pieces on that big frame at the beginning, I kind of gave myself a little more cardstock to hold on to when I was assembling. So for the blue one there, or the teal one, I used Mermaid, Tide Pool, and Peacock cardstock. For this yellow one, I have Sticky Note for the light, I have Sunflower for the medium, and then I picked a color from the yellow textured canvas cardstock pack for that kind of darker color because number 2 pencil was just a little bit too dark for what I wanted. And then finally, I have my pink one. So I have some ballet slipper cardstock, some guava cardstock, and then that darkest color is a raspberry. So you can see this one, I started by putting the base onto the frame first, and I do think that was the easiest method for assembly for me. So now all of my gumball machines are ready to go, and now I need to figure out which candies I want in which color machine. So I think I want my candy corns over here in the purple. I wanted my peppermints in the pink so that they definitely looked very Valentine-y instead of Christmassy. And I think my jelly beans over here, and then the colorful conversation hearts in the yellow. And I'm just going to put some liquid glue around the back side of that frame and then glue each of these solid pieces right to the back. Now, looking at all my candies together right here, this is where I felt like my peppermints were falling a little flat. They didn't have the color and dimension that my other candies had. And that bubblegum ink is not a Copic friendly ink. It is going to smear if I color over top of it. But if I just do these little flicks of color right on top of the ink, it will stay nice and crisp and it will look like it has some more dimension to the color. So I did that with pink. And then I came back with the red and did the same thing just with a smaller little flick of color. So I'm coloring right on top of that ink, but I'm not going over into the white. And that worked out really well to make it kind of stand out more. So now I need to move on to the actual treat bags of this project, and I'm using the tote bag die. I've cut 2 pieces, you need 2 to make 1 bag, and I'm using the Watercolor Wishes rainbow paper. So this is that beautiful watercolor paper that's solid on one side, but the other side has polka dots, which I think is kind of fun because you could have colors on the inside of your bag and then polka dots on the outside. And depending on where you put your die cut to cut your bag depends on what color polka dots you might get. So you can see this particular one, we have blue in this corner, we have purple up here, there's pink in the other corner. So it was kind of fun to have some different polka dots for each bag. But I do want to add a little bit of color to the outside of these. So the first thing I'm going to do is fold along the score lines that the die creates. So we have one right there at the bottom of the front panel. We have some tabs on the side. I'm going to pull out my bone folder and crease those really well. And then there's also some score lines that create a fold in the middle and a little V at the bottom. So you just want to carefully kind of fold those in the right direction that they're going to go. And of course, I'll do that to the second part of my bag, making sure everything's nice and crisp, and then fold the side in as well. So that straight line is a valley fold, and then so are the diagonal lines, just valley fold on the diagonal. Now I am going to go ahead and put my double-sided adhesive tape on my little tabs for assembly. And the reason why I'm doing this now and I'm going to ink second is because sometimes this tape doesn't want to stick to places that you've inked if that ink is still possibly wet. But if I put it on ahead of time and leave the liner paper on, that will be in place. It will almost act as a resist for the ink, and I won't have any problem with my adhesive sticking. For each of these, I'm going to pick a color that coordinates with the gumball machine that's going to go on it. So for the pink one, I'm using Peachy Keen ink, and I'm just dusting the bottom. So when this bag is sitting up, this will be the bottom of the bag, just like that. And then I also need to do the same to the side so that it matches, and that little dusting of color that comes up from the bottom goes all the way around my bag. So I've done the one side of the bag and I need to repeat the same process for the other half of my bag. So I've done the side and the front or the back, whichever it is. Now to assemble my bag, those two rectangles that are the bottom are just going to layer right on top of each other. So I'm putting adhesive on one, then I'm taking the second piece and turning it so that those two rectangles line up perfectly. Now I can peel off the liner paper from my little tabs and then fold up the front and back of the bag to the sides and stick them right to that adhesive. Now, you could probably use any gift bag you have in your stash, but what I thought was really fun about this tote bag is that gumball machine is almost exactly the same size as the handle. So when we glue this on the front, it's going to completely cover it up and you're not even going to see the handle. It's just going to be like a gumball machine standing up above the top of the bag. Now before I glue this on, I wanted to add a tag. So I cut some tags with the tiny tags, and then I'm using a sentiment from the Shutter Card Holiday Sayings stamp set that says "Just for You." You could use any stamp set with a small saying, you could use a to or from, whatever you wanted to do on your treat bags. For each of these, I cut a little tag out of the same colored cardstock as the gumball machine, and I'm just going to stamp them in coordinating ink. So for my pink one here, I have raspberry ink on ballet slipper cardstock. This one will be peacock ink on mermaid cardstock. For the purple, I have juice box ink on the lilac cardstock. And then for the yellow one, I'm actually using carrot ink on the sticky note cardstock. I just wanted to make sure that yellow stands out, and orange is a great way to complement that yellow. I want to tie my tag to my gumball machine. You could tie it to the handle, but since that's kind of hidden behind the gumball machine, I thought it would be fun to tie this directly onto the gumball machine. So in sticking with my monochromatic color scheme for all of my little gumball machines, I'm using some red hemp twine for this one. I've wrapped it around the gumball machine, put the tag on the right side, and now I'm just tying a bow. And then I can trim off that excess length of the tails. And now we have some fun texture to our gumball machine with that hemp twine. Now finally I'm ready to add my gumball machine to my little bag. I'm going to put the glue onto the bag so that I don't end up with any glue in the opening of the handle there. And then I'm standing my bag up so that I can make sure that gumball machine is flush with the bottom of the bag. So now you're going to see me repeat this exact same process with all four of the bags. For my blue one, I'm using some mermaid ink for the dusting and the ink blending around it. For the purple one, I have some grape jelly ink. And of course, depending on what pattern paper you use for your treat bag, you may not even want to do the ink blending. This just looked really good on that white. And then for the yellow gumball machine, I'm actually using some peach fuzz ink. Again, it's that kind of orangey tone, but the oranges and the yellows really go great together. Once I have all the inking done, I can assemble these just as I assembled the first one that I showed you earlier by gluing the bottoms together and then assembling the sides. And then of course I need to tie on the little tiny tags that I created for each of these. I'll be using turquoise twine for this aqua colored gumball machine. I will use some coral twine for the yellow one, again pulling in that kind of orange and peachy colors. And then of course some lavender twine for the purple one. So now that they are all assembled with their little tags, I can add each of these to the little tote bags. I feel like you could make these in an assembly line if you were making a lot of them. You could also take out some of these steps to make them a little easier if you were making multiples as well. But I just think that these turned out really cute. And of course, we need some glitter before these are done, but using stickles, that is the last thing we want to do. I'm using some to add some little highlights to all of these candies, which I think makes them stand out even more. So just a little bit on each of the little jelly beans. I'll do the same thing to the candy corn, and I also think this makes those pieces kind of stand out from each other a little bit more. For the conversation hearts, I'm being sure to not put my glitter over my stamped messages so that they don't smear. and then just a little bit of glitter to the peppermints. I think these make them all look like sugary sweets, which I think is really fun. So here is a look at all of those finished cute little treat bags using the Build a Gumball machine and the How You Bean add-ons. I just think that they're super fun, and there's lots of ways that you could customize these to be whatever color scheme for whatever holiday you wanted. And now they're just ready for some candies. My favorite is conversation hearts. I hope this has inspired you to take a look at your stash and see what you can put inside of your Build a Gumball machine. Thank you so much for watching. Have an amazing day. Bye.